Good afternoon, everyone. Are we ready? I hereby call to order the study session of Palm Desert City Council on Thursday, February 15th. Today's topics are Article 34 in the California Constitution and the Palm Desert Visitor Services. Who will be beginning today? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. Jessica Gonzalez, Housing Manager with the Housing Division in the Finance Department. The purpose of this presentation is to provide a quick overview of Article 34, as well as to provide a summary of the city's existing authority under Article 34 and what the next steps are needed for future and why. Article 34 of the state constitution, adopted in 1950, requires voter approval of low-rent housing projects that are developed, constructed, or acquired by a state public agency. That would be the city, of course, and as well as the Housing Authority and the successor agency to the Palm Desert Redevelopment Agency. Article 34 applies only to rental housing. I'd like to clarify that. And it's for low-income households. Households that would be 80% or less of the area median income. To give you an example for that, a family of 4 earning less than $74,550. Article 34 is implemented by the Health and Safety Code Section 37,000, sorry. The terms of Article 34 exclude certain projects and activities. Projects that have no more than 49% of the units restricted for low-income households. So if we have a project that is being proposed with 100 units, 49 of those units are being restricted, that project would not be subject to Article 34. If there's 50 units or 51, then it would be subject to Article 34. Typically, the ones that fall under this exemption are any density bonus projects. Most of the time, it's about 20% of the units of a community that are being considered, so it wouldn't be subject to. Another project type that would be exempt would be owner occupied, such as those that are, even though they're restricted, our Desert Rose or Falcon Crest communities would be exempt as well. Additional inclusions that exist under Article 34 is when a public entity is carrying out governmental functions. For instance, recently the Gerald Ford apartments that did come through and were approved, the city nor the Housing Authority or the successor agency provided any assistance. It was just governmental function of the city to approve that project. So it was actually exempt from Article 34. In 1978, the city's voters provided authorization for purposes of Article 34. The provisions in the approval provided that there would be a limit to how many low-rent housing projects or units would be produced or constructed. That limit was 5% of the total dwelling units within the city. The Housing Division has historically been the one managing for the city the compliance for Article 34. And as you can see in the table here is a summary of the city's existing capacity under Article 34. Using the 2020 US Census, the total dwelling units for the city are estimated at 39,751. Taking 5% of that, we're at 1988. Using what we have built and acquired to date is 1,267. That number comprises primarily of the Housing Authority units and Hobley Gardens. Under construction, we have 266 units, which consist of Vitalia project, And then we have some additional units under construction, which is 478 units, bringing us to a total of 2,012 units that are subject to Article 34. Using the census and assuming no loss of units are from the ones that are proposed under construction or pre-construction, the city would have a total of 40,468 dwelling units. That's taking the 771 units that are under construction and pre-construction, increasing our 39,751 unit total that we have in units, bringing us to a total of 5% of that at 2,023. So if you look at 2012 units that we have right now programmed to be built and are subject to Article 34, we would be in compliance. However, in November 24 general election, Article 34 will be provided as an opportunity for California voters to decide if they want to repeal Article 34. It was programmed for March 24, but it was moved by the last state legislation session. We don't know what the outcome of the November general election will be, if it'll be repealed. And because of that, in the event the voters don't repeal it, new projects that may come to the city being proposed for construction, the city would be at its max and would not be able to any projects that consist of rental units providing greater than 50% of the units as affordable to lower income households. The city has an opportunity to authorize a ballot measure for the November ballot that can request voters to increase the capacity under Article 34. Passage of the ballot measure requires a simple majority vote. The ballot measure would not automatically guarantee any additional affordable rental housing units to be built, commit any funding from the city or any of the public agencies, and all affordable rental housing development would still have to go through the required city approvals that are required for any development. No. Oh, I think it's the wrong. I apologize. It's the wrong version. There's some additional slides that were provided. The additional slides provide some options that staff is considering as part of the proposed ballot that we will bring to the city council in the next month to consider. Apologize. Let me go through my slides so that I can. There are different options that staff is considering as part of the increasing the capacity for Article 34 that the city would need to do in order to continue to provide affordable housing projects. Some to consider is either staying status quo, where no further capacity would be available, increase the quota by a set amount, whether it be a specific number or maybe by the RHNA number that needs to be met, increase by a percentage, which is how it exists as of now with a 5% increase, 5% amount of the dwelling units. And also as a fourth option would be increase it with no limit. If we were just to give a summary with regards to the pros and cons on those different options, if we were to continue with status quo, the benefit, there really isn't any. Honestly, there isn't, because it's limiting the additional capacity that we would have to be able to provide opportunities for low-income households, as well as it would limit us from meeting our goals under the housing element. Increasing it by a quota would allow for construction of low-income housing units up to that quota established, It also will allow us to meet our housing element RENA numbers. And it would provide a threshold for the community to be aware of what that amount would be. Some cons to that would be that the option would be limited by that quota. It will require more frequent request of amendments or increases to the capacity under Article 34 for the city. The third option, going through a percentage, would be beneficial with regards to allowing more construction. Of course, that would give that option, but it would give it as an option based on the city's growth. So if we continue to have units produced, it would allow us to go by that percentage. It would be limited. The con would be that it's limited by just the percentage that it's established. What is being considered is a number between 6% up to 10%. Staff is suggesting somewhere in the middle, about 8%. The fourth option, increasing with no limit. Of course, that would be an option, and it would provide limitless option for us to be able to have new construction of affordable housing. The limitation there, and contrary to that, would be that the voters would not have an opportunity, community would not have an opportunity to have input, but it also removes the voters' participation. If Article 34 is repealed, then the city will have no restrictions. At this time, what staff will probably be doing is coming back to the city council in March with the request to move forward with a ballot measure to request voters to increase Article 34 authority. Staff will request some assistance from the Affordable Housing Subcommittee to assist in bringing these options, as weighing these options and putting the language together for the resolution on that ballot. Staff's available to answer any questions.
More of a comment, and I might need more information, but it seems in so many of our elections, there's so many ballot measures and they're very, very confusing to even people that follow politics and government. So I'm not sure if we go with option 4, increase with no limit, besides removing voter participation, is there any other
limitation to that?
Mm-hmm.
At this moment, we really have not gone through the whole assessment of that, but I would say no on my end.
Todd, do you have any input on that?
Yeah, we're a little concerned with making that recommendation to you based on, some of the HOAs that we've had intensive conversations with, particularly recently, about affordable housing in their areas and whether they will understand it. So I think that given the fact that we're getting fairly close to build out, that, what Jessica's talking about in terms of looking at maybe an 8% limit, most likely gets us to where we need to be in order to keep making deals happen. We are concerned about how we clearly, if there is no limit, that fear factor, misunderstanding in the public. So.
Okay, I understand now where we're coming from. Okay, thank you.
I have a question about computation of the 5%. In addition, building from the 2020 census as a base, in addition to adding the affordable units at issue, may we add other new builds that demonstrably add to that 2020 census, University Park, et cetera?
Correct. The reason I'm using the 2020 census as our basis is because it is our most reliable at this moment. There's some historical information that needs to be compulated in our system, but it does take a little bit of information. And I know that I'll be working with planning in our permit center to get that information compiled together, but we'll be working with a better compilation of that. I did ask our departments from 2021, which would be the census information forward, through last year of November, there's already 500 units more and above that
Right.
number.
So, and I believe I'm on the subcommittee that will get this. So I hope when the subcommittee entertains this, we can perhaps have some input from our consultants on the sales tax measure. About the advisability of the city trying to explain two different things in the same election, and some good calculations on how long we can live with the 5% without it constraining possible projects. Because optimally, we would give this a chance for the voters of the state to remove Article 34 from the picture, in which case problem solved.
Correct.
Thank you, Jessica, for the report. Two questions. In the first part, you mentioned that the city voters in 1978 approved Article 34. However, this fall, it's going to a statewide ballot. So,
The 1978 is our local ballot measure that was implemented or passed. The one that we're talking about, the November one, is the state. The state is actually trying to, or it's being repealed by the state.
okay, so it would affect all municipalities who have
No.
put something like this into place.
Correct. So essentially, it does away with the 1950 passed legislation.
Perfect. And one other question on the, if we go with status quo, what are the repercussions, if any, if we don't meet the RENA numbers? What repercussions do we face as a city? Okay. All right. All right. Got it. Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
And I think clearly status quo is not anything that's going to work. We don't want the punitive approach that Sacramento seems to take. So this is something that we're going to be able to review in the subcommittee and really dig deep in.
Yes, so the next step will be to come before the council and request authorization to put this as a ballot. And as part of that request, it'll include to review the language that will go on the resolution with the Affordable Housing Subcommittee. We will then come back sometime at the end of either April or May with the actual resolution and what will go in the ballot.
Okay, and to Councilmember Kelly's point, putting two things on the ballot could be overwhelming. You know, we really want to focus strongly on what we're trying to get across the finish line. So one of the things I'd really like to look at, if we could, is what happens if we wait 2 years and we look at it for the next 2-year election.
That is an option as well that can be considered.
Yeah.
Yeah,
May I
just-
follow up?
Please.
Yeah, that's the point I was trying to make by saying, let's refine the calculation based on additional units since 2020 that we can demonstrate beyond question. So that when the subcommittee meets, we know how much leeway we actually have if we wait for the potential repeal of 34 to take care of the problem, potentially leaving us to put it on a subsequent ballot.
Understood?
Thank you. That was wonderful and in-depth with a very complex issue. And I agree with my peers that we already have a very complex matter as we look at taxes, how it goes, how it applies, where it comes from. And this would be a very challenging issue to get to the detailed level of education to make it comprehensive. Not that our residents aren't smart, but to get to making the full practice of reading all of the language on there. So I think it, would not be a horrible idea to look at exploring the longevity of this.
Unfortunately, it got passed on. It was supposed to be heard in March, and so we thought we would have the opportunity in November if it was not repealed, and then it was more effective. But it got passed to the November one, so we now have to do it simultaneously.
So we don't have the option of pushing it out. This has to be on
Well,
November.
We do have the option. What I'm saying is on the state level, that one got passed from March to the November one.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Say another municipality has a limit of 7 or 8%. They have a, Article 34 number, they decided they want to hit 7 or 8%. Is the problem that the state's trying to solve, is it our 5% number? Or is it,
No,
they
that's
just wanted to not give any municipality?
correct. They just want to do away with it completely.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So they want to do away with it. Let's say it isn't, and you said it's a simple majority on that. So if it is not, let's say it's not repealed and it still exists on the books, then if we put something on our books and that puts us in a position to wait 2 years, do we then preempt whatever might happen later, or?
Well, we would just have to plan with regards to the period of time from this year to the next available election to put this ballot on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we move on to the next item?
Yeah, in the next item, we have had a couple of comments about possibly looking at integrating the visitor center into the library. And so the staff question that we'd like to get some feedback from you on is when we do move into the library and take over operations July 1, is that an optimal time to test this and see how the visitor center, visitor services would integrate into the library? So we wanted to get your feedback before we did anything. Just kind of see what your thoughts were. So I'll turn it over to Eric to take you through staff's questions.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. Eric Saya, Director of Economic Development. Like the city manager mentioned, we were looking at a standalone visitor center that was here at the Civic Center Park. Essentially, that project has been shelved, and we've been looking at other ways to deliver and continue to deliver this service. You can see here, Visitor Services provides over 8,000 interactions with the public, whether it's people that are coming into City Hall or phone calls that are received. And today, the Visitor Services has located in various parts of the city, but for the past 8 years, it's been inside City Hall. Some of the great things that really work for the Visitor Center is that it's here at the Civic Center campus. So it really presents the city quite well, as we have a beautiful campus here in the largest park, I think, in the Coachella Valley. But there's also a lot of staff support. So we're currently staffed where there's one full-time person for visitor services, and then there's support staff behind that for when things start to get busy, like now during season. Some of the problems with the current location, though, is that we're really limited in terms of service delivery by the hours of City Hall. And since we're trying to accommodate and reach out to visitors, they can't really come here on the weekends because we're limited to just Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. There's also very limited space in the area that the Visitor Services currently operates, and that doesn't have any ability or room for merchandising, which is something we had offered in the past, and it's feedback that we continue to get from the public that does come in and interacts with our staff. Also, because of the nature of City Hall, where we're conducting business, where we're working with Jessica in housing, the finance department is in the same area. There's a lot of interaction or conflicts between city business and some of the members of the public that are trying to access visitor services. Next slide. So as city manager mentioned, we think there's a real opportunity at this moment. And we had talked even with the previous supervisor for the Visitor Services Center, that there could be real synergy between the library and the visitor services, as really one of the main goals for both of these is to really provide the public information. And so as the facility for the new library is being designed, even the modification to the existing library site, this is a really good opportunity for us to really test visitor services and the library and see what kind of collaboration and overlap can happen between the two services. And moving this to the library, it would allow us to open 7 days a week and have very similar hours to the library. So we're expanding operations. And since we're still in the design phase, that spacing can be determined now. There'll also be the ability again to sell merchandise, something we continue to hear, and really a trial to really train library and visitor services staff and also look at what kind of spacing needs and potentially separation needs to happen between the two services. One thing we don't know at this time is, we will continue to look at it, really what are the staffing options needed for an expanding operation. In the past, we've had a number of full-time employees for visitor services, part-time and even temporary or volunteers. And we'd be having to evaluate that during this trial run with the library location. So with that, that's my presentation, and we're looking for questions and feedback.
Thank you. I think it's a great idea. It's a great opportunity to try something out. I do have one question. We have that wonderful kind of historical representation of the 50 years of Palm Desert. Could we find a place in the library to put that in? Because I think we might want to tweak a few things, but I think it's excellent. And I know in the past, when we've been in other locations for the visitor center, we've had volunteers, and I think that works too. It gives us an opportunity to merchandise as well. So I think the idea, I mean, we have a prime opportunity to try this out under these circumstances. I think it's a great idea. And I'm here, I always come in on the weekend to work a little bit, and it is inevitable that I wind up helping people, and I run in and I go get them all the pamphlets and do all that. So if we can, you know, if I'm seeing as many as I'm seeing, I can only imagine how many people don't have the opportunity on the weekend to get the information for Visitor Center. So I think it's a great idea.
I agree. The opportunity for visitor services to be available 7 days a week is huge. Because so many visitors want information on the weekend, and hopefully this could create some synergy where library patrons become aware of visitor services and vice versa. So sounds great.
Yes, and I'll just echo those sentiments. I think it's a great idea, and it's worth at least trying out and seeing how it goes. And I assume the visitor center would have a closed off section from the quiet time of the library.
Yeah, we're coordinating now with the Director of Library Services on that whole configuration.
Great, yeah.
Thank you. No questions. My thoughts, again, I think it's great. A trial run is always wonderful before we move along. Having 7-day service is wonderful. And we often hear from folks, they didn't know what they didn't know. And this is a place not only for our local folks and families, but especially our guests, knowing we get a lot of weekend traffic. So I think this is a great idea to integrate. We're working smarter about this and maximizing our funding. So great job. Any final thoughts? And move on to the other item.
What else do we have on the? We have a closed session? Yeah. Yeah, okay.
At this time, now I close the study session section of today, and we move along. We now move on to closed session. Thank you.